Alright, so let's continue from where we left off. So previously we looked at the basic JavaScript part of the curriculum, and in this one we are going to continue with the ES6 part of the curriculum. Now ES6 is just a more standardized version of JavaScript, and it came with new and improved syntax and more improved way of doing things. So let's dive right into it. Okay, so the first thing we are going to look at is to compare the scopes of the var and let keywords. Okay, so if you are not familiar with var and let, you can click here and read about it. Alright, so for this particular challenge, what we are supposed to do is that you are supposed to fix the code, this one right here, so that the I declared in the if statement, that is this I right here, is a separate variable from this I right here that is declared with var. Okay, so we are also supposed to do that without using the var keyword. Alright, so the way we're going to do that is to use let to declare this variable. Now this is in the function scope, so it can be accessed from anywhere inside the function. And this second I right here, when we declare it with I, means it is within the if statement. So it's within this place and cannot be accessed outside of the if statement. So now let's do, okay, a console log, or no, there's no need to do a console log. Let's just call the function. And as you can see, block scope I gives us block scope, which is this one right here, so this variable. So the first console log gives us this variable because we are calling I within the if statement. And then the second console log gives us this variable because we are calling I in the function scope. Alright, let's move on. So with this next challenge, now we are looking at how you can mutate an array with an array that is declared with const. You know, ordinarily when you declare a variable with const, it cannot be changed, its value cannot be changed. But when you have an array, for example, you have s here 5 6 7, you can use the bracket notation to update the element inside the array. Okay, so let's see how we can do that for this challenge. So we already have a const s, which is an array with 5 7 and 2, and we want to use the bracket notation to change it such that the arrangement will be 2 5 7. Okay, so the way you can do that is to say s0. Remember, arrays are 0-based index, so s0 will give us the first item of the array. Let's set it to 2, and we also do s1, that will give us the second item of the array. We set that to 5, and then we do s2, which will give us the third item in the array, and then we set that to 7. Now let's do a console log of the function. Okay, that gives us undefined. Yeah, because we are not returning anything. Okay, so for example, let's just say if I were to return this s, yeah, now you see we have 2 5 and 7. Okay, so now we saw that we were able to update the element in the array, but what if we do not want that to happen? What if we don't want to, like, we want to set that the elements within the array cannot be updated? So JavaScript gives us a method called object.freeze, so we can use object.freeze to prevent that from happening. So for example, we have this object here called mat constant, and it has a pi property with this value here. So we want to apply the object.freeze on it to prevent someone from changing, adding, or deleting. So we just say object.freeze, and then within the parentheses we write the name of the object. So in this case it's going to be constant. All right, so that's it. Okay, so the next thing we want to do now is to use something called arrow functions. Okay, so arrow functions are functions, but they are a more elegant way of writing functions. Really, there's very little difference. There is a difference, but just very little difference between normal functions and arrow functions. But let's see how arrow functions are written. So to write arrow function, you just use the const keyword, the name of the function. You bring this equal to sign here, and then your parenthesis, the arrow, and then the rest of the function. So what is changing is that we are no longer using the function keyword. Okay, so for this challenge, you are to rewrite the function assigned to the magic variable, which we have here, and make it using the arrow function syntax. So we just say const magic, which is the name of the function, bring your equal to parenthesis, then bring the array sign, the arrow sign, okay, and then return new date. Okay, so now this is correct, but as you can see there is no body, so we can just delete this and delete this return statement and put it on one line like this. Now this will work, as you can see, like we have over here. Okay, so now let's see how you can use arrow function with parameters. So it's just the same way that you use normal arrow functions with parameters. You just put the parameters inside the parentheses. Okay, so let's change this my concat into an arrow function. So we are going to take away the function keyword, and then we are going to add the arrow symbol here. So you write it by writing the equal to sign and the greater than sign, and that's it. Okay, so what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to rewrite the my concat function, which appends content of array 2 to array 1, so that the function uses arrow function syntax. Okay, so I guess it should be const now. All right, now let's see how we can set default parameters for your function. So in order to help us create more flexible functions, ES6 introduces something called default parameters. Okay, so this is just a way of adding default values to your parameters, so that when your function is called without a parameter, the default value will be used. So as you can see from this example, we have a function called greeting, and we are passing in the parameter name, but we're also giving the name parameter a default value of anonymous. So anytime somebody calls the function with a value or with an argument, that argument will be used. But when you call the function without an argument, then the default value, which in this case is anonymous, is what is going to be used. Okay, so now let's see how we can modify the increment function which we have here by adding default parameters, so that it will add 1 to the number if value is not specified. Okay, so if value is not specified, we want value to have a value of 1, like so, and that should work. Okay, so next up, let's talk about something called rest parameters. And the syntax for REST parameters is these three dots you see here. Okay, so the way it works is that it helps us to create more flexible functions. So we'll see an example and you will see how it works. So what we want to do is that we want to modify the function sum using the REST parameters in such a way that the function sum is able to take any number of arguments and return their sum. So right now, the function sum can only take 3 arguments. If you give it more than 3 arguments, it will not work. But how can we modify it such that it can take any number of arguments, whether 3, 6, 5, or whatever you give it? So the way you're going to do that, first, let's take this off. And then we're going to give the args to the function as a parameter. But we are going to proceed it with a 3 dots, which is the syntax. And now, this makes it such that this function can accept an array with any number of elements inside them. All right. Okay. Now, we also have something called the spread operator. So, the spread operator allows you to expand arrays and other expressions in places where multiple arrays or elements are expected. Okay, so for example, you have your var r here, and if you want to find the highest number in the array, you have to use mat.max, but you also have to apply this .apply method and do all these things. But if you just want a very simple way of doing it, you just use the spread operator like so, and what JavaScript will do is that it will spread the items in the array inside here so that mat.max can easily find the biggest one. Okay, so let's see how we can fix this. So the way we are going to do that is just say r2 is equal to ... r1, and that should settle it. So as you can see, console log, when you console log r2, it gives you the element of r1, which is now assigned to the variable r2. Okay, so how do we use destructuring assignment to extract values from objects? Okay, so as you can see, we have an object here called user, and this object has 2 properties, name and age. And to get the name property, we say user.name. To get the age, we say user.age. Another way you can also do that, which is called the destructuring assignment, is to just say const, bring your curly braces, and inside the curly braces, write the names of the properties. And then you say equal to, here will be the name of the object itself. So let's see an example here. We have a high temperatures object with 3 properties, and we want to rewrite this code here such that we can use destructuring assignment. So you're going to say const, bring your curly braces, and we are going to say today, comma, tomorrow, which is the name of the properties we want to access, and we say equal to the name of the object, so temperatures, like so. Now I'm going to delete these ones, and that should work. Okay, so moving on, we want to use destructuring assignment again, and want to use it to assign variables from objects. All right, so like we did before, we have a user and we have a name property and an age property. But what if we wanted to give this or change this name property to become username? or change this age to become user age. We just use the curly braces. We assign username to name and then user age to age. Okay, so using the high temperatures object which we used in the previous example, let's see how we can do that. So the way we are going to do that is just say const, bring your curly braces, and we're going to say today. Now the value of today, we want it to be high today, comma, want tomorrow to be high tomorrow, and then equal to the name of the object. So I'm just going to copy the name of the object from here and paste it here. All right, now for example, if we were to do a console log of high today and high tomorrow, you see what we get. First, let's delete this one so we no longer need them. You see we get 77, which is the value of this property today, and then we get 80, which is the value of the tomorrow property. Okay. Okay, so now use Destructuring assignment to assign variables from nested objects. Okay, so sometimes you can have nested object, right? So this is an object user, and within user, the property John Doe is itself an object. So this is an object within an object. That's what we call nested object. Now to use Destructuring assignment, the way we do that is to just say John Doe, bring your colon, and then you bring your curly braces within the bigger curly braces, just like you have it for the object, then write the names of the properties. Okay, so it's the same thing that has been done here. So we have John Doe, which is the name of the property or the name of the object within or nested within the bigger object, and then inside here we have another curly braces containing the age, and we are assigning to age user age, and we are also assigning to email user email. So let's try this here. What do we want to do? We want to replace the two assignments with a unique Destructuring assignment. Okay, let me reset this lesson. All right, so my previous solution was already there, so I've reset it now. So we're going to say const, and we are going to say today, because this is a bigger object, but what we are interested in is the today property, which has a value that is itself an object. So we say today, let's bring our curly braces. Okay, bring your colon, bring another curly braces, and then we say low, want to assign to low today. I want to assign to high today. All right, so that's it. Now we can delete this one from here, and let's assign, let me copy the name of the object, and we'll assign this to the local forecast, and that's it. Okay, now let's see how we can use Destructuring assignment to assign variables that we are getting from an array. Okay, so here what you have is you have a variable a which is equal to 8. You also have a variable b which is equal to 6. Now the challenge is to swap these values. So you want it such that a, the value of b becomes the value of a, and the value of a becomes the value of b. So we can use the array Destructuring, and we just say AB is equal to BA. Now let's do a console log of A and B and let's see what happens. All right, as you can see, okay, so as you can see, before A has a value of 8 and B has a value of 6, but after we did the swapping, B now has a value of 8, which is this one here, and A now has a value of 6. All right. Okay, so how do we use, or how do we destructure using the REST element? So the way this one works is that, for example, here we have an array. Okay, so sometimes what we want to do is want to get the first item, the second item, and then want to save everything else that is left in a variable. So the way we do that is to write a variable for the first item, bring out comma, write another one for the second item, bring out comma, and then we use the REST notation, which is the 3 dots here, bring the name of the variable, and then what JavaScript will do is that it will pack everything here that is left and assign it into this variable right here. Okay, so here in this function remove first two we have here, what we want to do is we want to remove the first two elements, and then so this first two elements, and then everything else that is left we want to return it from the function. So the way we can do that is to say const, now let's say item 1 for the first item, item 2 for the second item, and using the REST notation we'll say dot 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 other items. Okay, and we'll say equal to list. Now list is the array that will be receiving as an argument to the function. So for example, here we have source. Source has been given to the function. So now we want to return other items. So let's do other items. And let's do a console log and see what we get. So I'm just going to copy this and paste it here. And as you can see, the first two elements has been removed and we are getting the rest of the items in the array which has been assigned to this other item. So that is what the function is returning. Okay, we can also use the Destructuring assignment to pass an object to a function's parameter. Okay, so as you can see, we have a profile data argument here, and inside this we have name, age, nationality, location, which is equal to profile data. So we are getting all these properties from profile data, which is also here. All right, so another way we can do that instead of writing profile data is to just destructure them. So you can use the curly braces and then inside you write name, age, nationality, and location. Now this is useful especially when you are getting a very large object and you only need just a few of the properties of that object and you don't need to use everything. Okay, so the way you can, for example, we have the start object here with a lot of properties and we only want to send the max and the min properties. So instead of getting everything as an argument, we can just destructure them and then we can call the max and the min properties. Now once we've done that, we also have to remove the stats from here because now we are getting the properties directly because we've destructured them. So let's also take this one away from it, and that's it. Okay, now let's see something called template literals. Okay, so you know we can concatenate strings or variables that are strings using the single quotation marks or double quotation marks. But here, when we use the backticks, ES6 gives us a very useful feature because we don't have to be concatenating. We just have to write a string, and anytime we want to use a variable, we just use the $sign here with these curly braces. Okay, all right, so I'm going to reset this lesson and then let's work on this. So here we have a result object. Inside this object we have some arrays, and our focus is on this failure array. Okay, so what we want to do is that we want to make the function such that the function will return a list of list items, so 3 list items. Okay, so there's an HTML element, as you can see, a list element, and the text that we are going to give to each list element is going to be these ones. So this, the first one will have this text, second will have this text, and the third one will have this text. So how do we do that? All right, so the way we do that is, first, we know we are going to be going over this array, so we need a loop, okay, so that we iterate over them. So the first time the loop runs, we'll get this text here. The second time we'll get this one, and the third time we'll get this. So let's use a for loop. For, bring your parentheses and then the curly braces. Now inside the loop, I will say let I equal to 0, and the loop should run as long as I is less than R, because R is the argument you are getting, and then I plus plus anytime the loop runs an iteration. Okay, so what we want to do is that each time the loop runs, we want to get this value or this depending on what time the loop is run. So the first time the loop runs, we want to get this, and we want to push this as a list item. So we'll give it as a list item, and we want to push it into this failure items array here. So the way we do that is to say failure items dot push, bring your parentheses, and then we are going to bring the backticks, because that is what will help us write the string literals. So backticks, and then let's write the HTML element, which is list or li element, like so. Now this is going to have a class of text warning, like so. Now how do we get the value here? So since there's a string, we want to use the string literal, so we use the $sign and the curly braces. Now we say R and then the value of I. So the first time the loop runs, I will be 0, so R 0. So the item at index of 0 is what we'll be getting, and so on and so forth. Okay, so now let's do a console log of failure item and see what we have after the loop is done running. Okay, as you can see, we have the same thing here as we have here. All right. Now let's look at something here, which is a shorthand property. It's a way of making the object literal concise. So here we have a getMouse property with x, y arguments. Then we are saying x maps to x, y maps to y. Now JavaScript makes it simple for us, so we can just, instead of saying x map to x, y map to y, we can just say x, y, and under the hood JavaScript will do that for us. So it's the same thing here. We can just say name, age, and gender. JavaScript will do the rest for us. All right, now write concise declarative functions with ES6. Okay, when defining functions within objects in ES5, we have to use the keyword function. All right, as you can see here, we have a person function and we have a say hello property, which is a function. So we have to use the keyword function here. But within ES6, you can just remove the function keyword and JavaScript will still work. Because under the hood, JavaScript will do that for you. So let's do that here. So we're going to remove the function keyword here, as well as the colon. And yeah, that should work. Okay. Now, what we want to do is use class syntax to define a constructor function. So we have classes in JavaScript that we can use to create objects. Okay. So anytime we create an object in JavaScript, sorry, let me reset it and then we do it again. All right. So the way this works, I will encourage you to read this, but let's see the way this works. So the way this works, we use the class keyword. Okay. So say class and then the name of the object that we want to create. We say vegetable, bring your curly braces, and then we'll call the constructor function. Inside it, we'll give it an argument. So for example, here we are told to give it an argument or a property called name. Now we'll say this dot name is equal to name. So what we are saying is that the name of this, the name property, the value of the name property of this vegetable object is going to be the name of the argument. That's why, for example, here you created a new vegetable and you gave it an argument of carrot. So that argument now becomes the name of the new vegetable that has been created. That's why you can say console.log carrot.name, and what do we see in the console? That is the argument or the name, in this case, which is carrot. Okay. Now I'm going to reset this also and then we do it from afresh. So let's see something called getters and setters, which we can use to control access to an object. Okay, so here we are told to use the class keyword to create a thermostat class. So first of all, use the class keyword and the name of the object, which is going to be thermostat in this case. Then bring your curly braces. Now we have to use the constructor, and the constructor is going to accept a Fahrenheit temperature. So you're going to say constructor, let's give it temp in Fahrenheit. All right, so I'm just going to copy it so that I avoid any likelihood of spelling mistake. Okay, now we'll say this dot temp in Fahrenheit. Now this underscore is just helping us to denote that this is a private method. Okay, that's all it's doing, but you don't have to do it, but that's the convention. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is we have to declare the gets method. So we say get temperature because that's the method we are using here. So we say get temperature, and there's going to be we've been given the formula here for converting Celsius into Fahrenheit and Fahrenheit into Celsius. So we're just going to use that formula. So 5/9 times this underscore temp in Fahrenheit let me just copy it to avoid any spelling mistake. Then minus 32. Okay, let's put this in parentheses. Sorry. All right, so now we've set the get method. Let's do the set method. So we say set temperature, and this has to have an argument. So we say temp in Celsius, and we say this underscore temp in Fahrenheit. Again, I'm just using the formula is equal to temp in Celsius times 9.0 over 5. Let me just copy the formula from here. Just paste it like so. All right, so that's it. So now, for example, let's do a console log of temp, and you see what you get. As you can see, we get 26, just as it is stated here. Let's also go here and see we get 24 here. So the first one gives us 24.44. The second one gives us 26. All right. Okay, now let's look at modules. So in JavaScript, modules are basically just a way of writing your code so that it is reusable. So you can write a code and then put it in a module so that you can use it in other parts of your application. Okay, so the way you do that is to first create a script. Okay, so create a script tag. That's one way of doing it, and set the type to module, and then here we are told to set the source to index.js, like so. Okay, now let's use export to share a code block. So once you have a module, you can export code from it, and then in other files you can also import those codes that you've exported. So first, let's look at how you can export a piece of code. So there are two ways of doing it. The first is to just write export before your variable or your function, or create your function and below it you write export, you bring your curly braces, and then the name of the function or variable or piece of code that you want to export. So for example, here we can do this export or export, and this will work, as you can see, or we can delete. So there are two ways of doing it. The second way is to come down here and write export, bring your curly braces, and then the name. So in this case, we say upper case string, comma, lower case string, and that one will also work. So you choose which one is more convenient for you. Okay, so now that we've learned how to export, let's see how we can import the code in other files. So the way you do that is just write import, bring your curly braces, the name of the code that you want to import, and then the file from which you are importing it. Okay, so here you are told that you are importing uppercase string, and lowercase string functions, and they are in a file called string functions, and this file is in the same directory as the current file. So you say import, use the import keyword, bring your curly braces, and then the name of the function you are importing. So in this case, uppercase string, lowercase string. say we are importing it from and the file path. So since it's in the same folder, we just do this and say string functions, which is the name of the file .js. All right, so that's it. Okay, so now you can also, instead of importing your functions one by one, you can just use import, then bring the star symbol, and it's going to import everything that you are exporting from that file. So let's see how that works. So you say import, bring the star symbol, as, then you give a name to the collective export that you are trying to import. So in this case, we are told to import it as string functions. So import everything as string functions, and then where are you importing it from? You are importing it from string underscore functions.js. That's the name of the file. Okay. So now let's see how we can create an export fallback with export default. So you can use something called export default, and usually you use this when you can use it for just one function on a page or one item on the page. Okay, so the following function should be the fallback value for the model. Please add the necessary code to do so. Okay, so we can say export default. That's it. And let's see in the next lesson how we can import a default export. So the way we do that is to say import add. So previously you see we're doing import, for example, subtract. So we'll do import subtract like this from math function .js. Okay, but now since the function we are importing is a default export, we don't need to bring these curly braces. We just need to write the name of the function, and that's it. We are good. Okay, so now let's talk about something called a promise. So in JavaScript, a promise is just like the name sounds, it's a promise. So you use a promise to say that you perform a piece of code or you do something later. Now, the promise takes two arguments, resolve and reject. So resolve when you do the thing you said you were going to do, and reject when you don't do the thing you said you were going to do. So let's see a practical example of how to create a promise. So we'll say const make server request equal to new promise. Now this is an object that has been created in JavaScript, like the way we are creating other objects with a class. That's why we are using new promise. Okay, so let's bring the resolve and then reject. Yeah, then that's it. Then we can write our piece of code here. Okay, so let's complete a promise with resolve and reject. So the promise you created in the last challenge is forever stuck in the pending state because you did not add a way to complete the promise. So the resolve and reject parameters given to the promise arguments are used to do this. The resolve is used when you want your promise to succeed, and reject is used when you want it to fail. So let's see how we can do that. So here we are told that if response from server is true, we have a variable here, and if this variable is true, we want to call the resolve method. Okay, and want to pass to the resolve method a string we got the data. So here I'll come down here and say resolve, which we are getting from here, and I'll pass to this the string we got the data, else let's use the reject, and we are going to say data not received. Okay. Now, we want to handle a fulfilled promise with something called then. So if your promise, let me reset this quickly. So if your promise is fulfilled, we can use then, the then method. We can attach it to it and then use it to execute immediately after the promise is fulfilled or resolved. So we're just going to add it like this and say then, and then we call result. Now result is given to us by the then function. Okay. Now we are told to console log the result. Whatever result is, we are going to console log it. Okay, so that's it. Now result in this case is we got the data which we are getting from here when the promise was fulfilled. Okay, finally, let's see how we can handle a rejected promise with something called a catch. So it works the same way as the then works. So my request.then. So after that, we attach the catch just to help us catch any failed promises or any errors. So we give it an argument of error, and then we want to console.log the error. All right. So I think that should be it. Yeah, so that's it for the ES6 part of the curriculum. So if anything was unclear to you, I think you can rewind the recording and then have a look at it. Yeah, so in the next lesson, we will be looking at regular expression. So do well to stick around and you can have a look at that as well. All right, so that's where we'll end for now. Bye-bye.